competency opens up doors, but then your ability to make progress towards a goal is the ability to discern which door is worth walking through. It's like standing in a room with 1,000 doors, and you could go through any of them, but you can't go through all of them. And so you need to choose one. And most people will sit there, even the competent ones, will sit there looking at them all. They'll be afraid to make a decision and get it wrong, because what if you go through the door and there was 9,000 other doors you could have gone through? Like, how do I know that wasn't the right door? And the thing is, there's two things there. One is that you can always go through a door, turn around, come back. You can always decide, like, after you've gone through the door, that's not the right door for me. You can always, like, that's climbing half the mountain, then realizing I'm on the wrong mountain. Yeah. Or realizing the path you're on won't get you to the top of the mountain. Therefore, you got to come back. But the reason people don't do that is because there's this sunk cost fallacy. You've put so much time and energy in to get to where you are that the idea of going back to the beginning and starting over is terrifying for most people. One of my favorite all-time quotes is from Daniel Kahneman. He wrote "Thinking Fast and Slow." And it's actually not a quote from him. I guess it is his quote, but it came through the guy that he co-wrote the book with. So he co-wrote the book with this guy who was doing the writing for him. And they had gone through draft after draft after draft. And Daniel would write a bit. He'd give it to the guy. He'd write it. They come back. They kind of edit it. And editing is really like going through, not with a scalpel, but with like a hacksaw and just like lopping things off. It can be incredibly brutal. And you got to be able to kill your darlings, as we say in the writing world. And this guy that was working with Daniel, he just talked about how Daniel would start over without blinking. He would just like have a chapter or an entire book and just be like, it's not good enough, and start over. And he'd rewrite it, and he'd rewrite the chapter again and again and again and again. He'd just scrap it. And he remember, it's really hard to do that, but he'd ask Daniel, he's like, how do you do that? Like, how do you have this ability just to like take all the work and energy that you put in before this and just let it go? And Daniel said, I have no sunk costs. Is like, so he's just saying, like, it doesn't matter how much time and energy, how much resources I put into a thing. I don't have sunk costs. So I'm never going to put more in just because I put more in the past. I'm not going to try and make a bad decision right by just doing more of the wrong thing. I'm just going to start over. And I remember thinking, like, that's a really badass idea. I have no sunk costs. And I've been thinking about this a lot with, with everything that happened at Invictus. There's definitely this feeling of like, okay, when something fails, you have the feeling of, how do I keep holding on to this or like sustaining it so that I don't have to go back? And for me, the big freeing moment came when I realized, like, I have no sunk costs. Even something this big, $100 million endeavor that implodes to the ground, it's like, I don't have any sunk costs. I personally have no ego tied to the idea of just being like, I was wrong. This didn't work. I'm going to the beginning. I'm going back down the mountain. I'm going to go back up because this path, it does not go to the top anymore. I can see there's a cliff. There's no way forward. And instead of pretending like that's good enough, like a lot of people will get to that point and then they'll convince themselves that's the peak. They'll put a flag in and they'll say this is good enough, and they just refuse to start over. But then you look at like the really great people of the past, great entrepreneurs of the past, great leaders of the past, and like they will fight as hard as necessary and even harder than you believe is possible to find a path forward. But as soon as they realize like they're on the wrong path, they'll just scrap it and start over. Like, this is Steve Jobs and being like, no, that iteration, that prototype, it's not good enough, so we don't launch. We don't do it until it's good enough. Elon being like, it's not good enough, we don't do it. Or like Elon's a great example too, where it's like, he'll build this really successful business with Tesla, and then he's not afraid to go back to the beginning with SpaceX and start over and get laughed at. Or, I mean, those kind of happen concurrently, but you could also say the same with Neuralink or with Starlink. Like, all of these other endeavors that he's done where or Twitter, like, he's not afraid to go back down the mountain and start over because he doesn't care what the judgments of other people say and like keeping you on that path. So I don't even remember how we got on this topic, but I've been thinking about it a lot recently, where like a superpower is the ability to say, I'm not afraid to start over. And when you have that ability, you're no longer locked into doing things just because you have to do them. Now you're like, if I don't want to do this, I don't have to do this. I'm no longer a prisoner. I guess we were talking about prisoner of potential, right? Yeah, the road trip to reset and just like get really clear about what door do you want to walk through? Because like ideally, when you're standing in that room with 1,000 open doors, you got to pick one, and you can always come back through if you get to the other side and decide it wasn't the right door. That's the idea of like going up half the mountain and coming back down. Ideally, though, you don't spend your life spinning your wheels going up wrong mountains, right? like ideally, you pick the best door possible, but you don't get paralysis by analysis and never pick a door. But so you do need to spend some time being clear, like, what is it that I'm looking for in an ideal outcome? Which door would give me the best likelihood of reaching that? So you're trying to winnow down the 1,000 doors down to like, okay, now I have 400 doors, and then choose a door. And then from there, instead of obsessing about making the right decision, focus instead on making the decision right. Yeah. And so that's the idea that like any decision pursued with enough intention and ferocity can be made successful. Any plan can be made successful if you attack it with enough intention and vigor. So like once you've gone through that door and you're pretty sure that with a 90% degree of confidence, it can get you to the desired end state you want to be at, then burn the boats, turn around, shut the door, lock the door, throw away the key so you can't go back out, right? Because like at the end of the day, like if you walk that path long enough, and this is Invictus is a great example of this. I walked through that door, I turned around, locked it, and like I said, I'm gonna make this work. Went pretty damn fucking far, and I was like, oh shit, yeah, this isn't gonna work. I'm gonna have to go back down to the beginning of the mountain. So now I'm gonna go back, and so then you turn around and you realize like, okay, the door was barring my way. The door now is like the psychological door in your mind that says I won't go back, or I can't go back, or what will people think about me if I go back? And the key there was for me, the really liberating thing was like, no door can stop me. I can kick down any door, whether it's in my way moving forward or barring my retreat. I can go back, and like the only thing that's stopping me from retreating is the fear of judgment that I have of others, or fear of judgment I have of myself. It's not actually the fear of actually starting over, because I've done it countless times. I've rebuilt. Like that's not the fear. It's the fear of the judgments that come with it. And I think that's what stops a lot of people in their tracks is like, I'm not afraid of starting over because you've been there, you've done that. I'm not afraid of going back to living in a van. I've been there, I've done that. It wasn't that bad. In fact, like I look back on those days, I'm like, those are the good old days. Like that times where you have to start over, there will come a point in your life you look back and you think like that wasn't so bad. Those were the good old days. And if you're comfortable going back to that place, like you're fucking unstoppable, right? So I don't know. That's what I've been thinking about.